Hi, everybody. Welcome. We should be live.
Hi, welcome to the Stream of Truth. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I'm Sean Kelly.
And today our topic is how to have your needs met in your most important relationship with yourself.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just getting a little piece of paper so I can make some notes as we go. This is the first time, I want to say before we get into the practice, this is the first time that I've, Tassel mentioned it pretty briefly to me last night, and I thought it was amazing. She kind of got it in from her guidance, and it's an awesome practice. So it's the first time that I've really been totally exposed to it, so I'll do my best. And I'll also just want to preface that I see things very differently than many, so I'll do my best, but yeah.
Awesome. We invite all viewpoints. We are inclusive of all. So would it be okay, Sean, if I just start with how this practice came through to me? What sort of background? Okay. So I think in my own expansion as a soul, I have really been looking at my relationships with other people and how I tend to show up for them and how they tend to show up for me. And probably similar to many, many people, from my childhood, I have held a pattern of, I want to say, being a no-needs Nancy. Just suppressing my needs, suppressing my preferences, acting like I don't have any needs. I'm just here for everyone else. I will give. I don't need anything. That type of orientation. And I was really, over this past week, really seeing that is how I act often in my significant relationships. And I was feeling really down about it. And I felt into all the feelings, and it was really uncomfortable. I didn't really want to feel into those feelings. But at the tail end of feeling into those feelings, what came in through my guidance was a question for me. The question was, Tassel, how do you show up for yourself? Do you make yourself a priority? Do you make your needs and preferences a priority, just within my own self? And this was a huge light bulb moment for me. As we always talk about, as within, so without. In my relationship with myself, if I'm not privileging, honoring myself, I'm going to see that on the external. And if I am privileging and honoring myself, I'm also going to see that in the external. And I think the programming is so strong for men and women, but I'm just going to talk about women for a minute because that's what I've experienced. As a mom and in a partnership, to me, the programming is you have no needs. You must just serve others. You must drop everything and just serve others. That it feels like for an adult woman, their worth beyond their sexuality, that's a big societal programming. But in addition to their sexuality, that they are in service to others. That is what I feel the programming is. So as I felt all this, some practices came through from my guidance. And the first practice is, what are my needs and how can I take care of them myself without anybody else doing anything? What are my basic needs so that I feel whole and content and peaceful internally? So, Sean, how do you feel about possibly each answering that question?
Yeah. I think that's a great idea.
And do you want to, at this point, share your viewpoint on needs in general?
Sure. Sure, I'll do my best. And so my viewpoint on needs are, I see needs the way that someone like, and I'm not trying to compare myself to these people, I'm just trying to say that they have an orientation that I try to embody in all moments. Because in that way, that's that's how I've found peace. People like Mahatma Gandhi, who live in practice the Bhagavad Gita, as well as the offers of living as the creator, seeing the creator in everything through the law of one, or Meister Eckhart, I believe. Essentially, I see my needs as my karmic, you could call them karmic, I guess, that would be a word, as needs that are energies within me that have developed from my sense of separation. Needs that are, at their base, fairly illusory. And so when I start to confront them, I can be a little bit, it's difficult for me to even know what some of them are, because it's almost like the volume of my own needs is just very low. And I think you could probably say that you've probably witnessed in me a sort of, unless I have something that I'm feeling is best for me in the moment, like resting, or something that I just feel I need to do, I'm generally gonna just flow with whatever's coming in. I tend to say, yes, let's go to do the thing. I tend to say, yes, let's do this. Yes, let's do that. Unless I feel like a philosophical difference, or like I feel something's not aligned, then I'll speak, of course. But I don't tend to have a focus or much consideration at all of my own need. And so this is a really interesting practice for me, because as I think there's a balance that can be held, and I'm not going to claim to know what it is, that balance. I think it's different for all people. I think that's why I'm oriented to that space. I do truly see myself as God most of the time. And in that state of consciousness, the desire for the earthly stuff isn't so strong. It's very muted. And although, so in that way, I can be both still when I'm elated, in joy, experiencing a desire come to fruition. I don't really get moved to that elation the way others do. The same way that I don't get moved into sorrow as much as others do, because I'm at a stillness, perceiving things a little differently than most. It's difficult to explain, but so when I try to then investigate my desires, I get a little bit confused, and so I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to talk about them, about Sean's desires. So it's like, my desire is to serve, and that's the desire. That's all I really understand. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing anything. I don't know what's going to happen or what I'm supposed to do. My desire has been sort of diluted down to serve, and I see most moments as offers of service and healing. So I see all contact as divine with other beings, other people. And so in that way, and I'm not perfect in it. I wobble, but I try to do this, I try to practice this, and I'm getting more and more sort of perfect in it. In that way, regardless of what they say or do or whatever, I still see them as God and that it's my sort of duty to offer them service. And so if they're not meeting my desire, that's great. But if they are meeting my desire, that's great. So it's a little bit weird for me to then talk about what I'd rather them do than what they are doing, if that makes sense. What they are doing is perfect. So for me to then go, well, I wish they would have done that though, just feels weird to me. They're doing what they're doing. So I get a little bit weirded out about this whole topic. So I really wanted, because Tassel and I just have sort of, we see these things a little differently. There's nothing wrong with either way of perceiving it. And, you know, I guess that's probably enough on my orientation. And my orientation isn't for everybody. It's not meant for everybody to sit in that space. It all depends, sort of, in my estimation, on like how much karma people want to, you could say, burn through or learn from in this lifetime. And so depending on how much karma and stuff we have, we may be unable to let go of the desires that we hold, or to let them sort of sit under the surface because they feel so strong. And when they feel that strong, I think it's entirely appropriate to investigate the desire, go attain it, and then reassess. So I think that's the whole pathway. And so the practice is amazing because we can't, my goal is to transcend desire, not meaning to abolish it, but to be aware of it at a different perspective. And in order to do that, I have to understand my own desire. And so the practice, whether you're trying to attain a desire or transcend a desire, is very good and very, I think, very empowering. So I hope that helps a little bit. I don't know if that helps at all. But yeah, so I'm a bit of a weirdo. So maybe you should go first. Well, I feel a little on the spot.
Yeah, but before we do the practice, I just want to say that what the orientation that you're in, I think, is amazing and beautiful. And we had this conversation before we got on the stream, is that for me, I feel I want to be in both orientations. For me, that's what feels resonant for me. I want to have this larger soul spiritual perspective of that, you know, truly it's just about my own inner peace and my connection with spirit and my growth as a soul that is really the big thing here. But at the same time, to me, I feel I'm in a human body. I'm on earth. I also want to have as rich of a human experience as I can. And to me, that plays out in I want to feel all my feelings. I want to tap into my human desires. I want to have both experiences. That's what feels right for me. So, okay. So should we want to try this? So maybe I'll go first with the practice?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, so the first practice is, what are my needs and how can I take care of them myself? And so this conversation we just had really connects into, I feel like, what my number one need is in my relationship with myself. And that is complete, blanket, pervasive, radical acceptance of my own truth and my own feelings and the orientation that feels resonant for me in my life. So, you know, this is a good example where you and I'm not sure they're so different, but maybe on the outset, these orientations seem a bit different. But for me to honor your orientation and honor my orientation, So I know that my number one need in my relationship with myself is to honor myself in every aspect, in the feelings I have, in the desires I have, in the dreams I have for my life, in the thoughts that I have, in honoring my physical vessel, just this massive, comprehensive honoring of me. That I feel is my number one need. And that sometimes might cause some conflict with other people because my orientation may be triggering for them or not resonate with them. All of that. So that's my number one need, is to live in my own truth. And my number one loyalty is to my truth above all else. That is my number one need, to live in my truth. And I really learned this lesson the hard way, as I know many of us have. I did not live in my truth for most of my life, and I really miscreated a very catastrophic life. And it took a long time to kind of get out of that and to create a more aligned life. So I really have learned I must always live in my truth. I must always be in my own alignment. So that's the biggest sort of philosophical granddaddy need I have. And then I would say the second need that comes to mind is I need to do fun things on my own that aren't about doing things with other people necessarily. That I'm a single mom and have my own household and run a business and all that. So often when I don't have my kids or when you're not here, my egoic mind will think, okay, you need to work now. You have some time, you need to work. And I don't think that's a healthy way to be. So I think a second need that I can give myself is learning how to have more fun just on my own, whether I'm with other people or not, just privileging that to have fun, that I don't necessarily need other people around to have fun. I can have fun on my own. I think those are my two big needs. Well, I'll also say to make time for my spiritual connection. Whenever I do a shamanic journey or I go into the records, I always have such a good experience and I always feel so connected, but I tend to kind of push that aside and not really make enough time for it. So I would say that's also something that I know would really continue to bring so much richness and wholeness to my being. So I guess those three: stand in my truth, have more fun, and continue to connect with spirit. Those are my needs that I can do for myself.
Awesome. Those are more or less my needs too. So, yeah, so it's interesting because I think I was framing this whole thing a little differently, which is probably why I was thinking the orientations were different. It sounds like actually the orientations are very similar. So I have the same need, the radical acceptance of myself in all aspects. This includes for me my perception of others. I see them as myself. So what I need to do is accept everything that comes, as knowing that it's part of myself. So when I witness corruption in the society or corruption in others, confusion in myself as well, like Sean, that I am able to accept that that's what it is, and that's perfect, that's okay. Just as I accept my own issues that I have that bubble up, I accept the issues of the world as my own issues, and I suffer with the world. I also have joy with the world in my acceptance of everything that is. After that, I seem to need time for introspection or meditation on whatever I've been experiencing. Without that, I seem to have difficulty calibrating or coming back to a balance. I'm getting faster and faster at the introspective time, I think, because the experience has less learning in it. There's less stuff for me to learn from each experience now. So I'm able to move through that quicker. I'm also getting better at the introspection. So I'm moving faster and faster, but sometimes I just need some space to like sit and think, basically. And then the other thing that I need is opportunity to serve others. The best thing about all of these needs is that all of them are sort of decided by me, right? Like, and the same with yours. They're really mindsets. They're not so much activities or, there are activities involved, but the activities come about from the mindset. So, that's a really good way to understand that these needs are not what I was talking about with karma or egoic selfish desires. These are different. These needs are basically needs to connect with the divine within us. And so that's exact. Those are my needs. Yeah. So I have the same needs that you have. I think when we talked about needs and desires, I started to think about, I want a new car or, these things. And I think that's where my mind was oriented to. And so I had real trouble understanding that frame of mind. So I think like Tassel said, we are a lot more in harmony with what we're thinking in the first place. Now I will say something like, for example, if I don't get time to introspect, can I be okay with that? Like, so even these needs, there's still a level of acceptance that can be applied when we're not achieving what we need, right? Sometimes we're just so busy serving, however we see fit to serve, that we don't give ourselves the right amount of time, and it's our choice to stop. We can stop serving for a little bit and just give ourselves what we need. So it's important to understand that we need time to introspect and like think back on what just happened over the last week, right? And what did I do? If we never take time to sit and think about these things, we're not really learning or processing the experiences. We're just having strings of experience. Or if like I don't see people that I can serve, how can I serve? Well, I can serve by, basically the opportunity to serve others is ever present. I can serve others just through my consciousness and trying to raise the vibration of the earth through magical practice, for example. I don't need to see anybody to serve them. So, and Ho'oponopono is another great example of that. If you want to serve an individual, apologize to them, basically. So yeah, we have the same. It's interesting that now that we've went through it, I think actually we have very aligned, similar needs. And so my apologies for being confused. It happens sometimes.
I think it's so interesting too, because this is the first time I've probably ever talked about one's relationship with oneself and really identifying one's needs with oneself. I don't think I've ever really publicly talked about that as a therapist. And again, in all of my years of clinical training, over 7 years for my PhD, this was never talked about either. I think so much of the messaging we receive about having our cup filled is through other people, movies. Like I love the Hallmark Channel. Yeah. I really like the Hallmark Channel, but the Hallmark Channel is such a disseminator of programming that, you need a partner, you need children, you need all these other people to fulfill you. Mm-hmm. And I think the way I'm beginning to think of all that is like, that's sort of like icing on the cake. I love my relationships. I love them so much. They do provide so much fun and richness and joy. But I have to bake the cake. I have to embody the cake first. I have to find peace and joy on my own first. And every other relationship is really sort of extra.
Yep.
And I think I'm just, honestly, before you and I really connected a couple of years ago, I was sort of waiting for my life partner to come in and sort of in a way putting my life on hold. Like, okay, things will be better at this point, or I'll be more content at this point.
I did the exact same thing.
And it's super interesting. Now you and I are in relationship and it's amazing. But part of what it has shown me is I don't receive my peace or my internal joy necessarily through the relationship. I must develop that and nurture that on my own.
And the really interesting thing that I'd like to say, I'm not sure what your experience of this part was, but we didn't come together until I totally let go of even ever having a partner.
Me, and basically me too.
I don't know if I shared that. But basically I just found a way to come to peace with the idea that I'll never have a partner. And you know, I still had the desire to have one, but I was also at peace if I didn't. And that way I was able to like act. I wasn't always clinging or pulling, trying to resist everything. And so that's another reason to understand our desires, because it's okay to, like, your desires may not be as selfless as ours seem to be. So our desires seem to be quite selfless in my estimation, because the goal of our desires is to be better at peace so that we can radiate peace, and then bring others to us in peace. And so the whole goal of our desires is to orient us to be a better service to others. So the intention for us is not to achieve things so much as it is to experience a harmony with ourselves, yes, which is serving others. And so it's okay. I wanted to say it's okay if your desire is to achieve a car or a job or the reason that we are on here talking and trying to teach is because we've gone through a lot of those life steps already. And those life steps for many have to be traversed. It's to the 16-year-old who just has been wanting a car for 8 years, he just got his driver's license or whatever, they finally get the car. That's going to make them happy for a time. Eventually they'll realize the car didn't really make them happy. It was more of a surface thing. And so it's totally okay. They had to go through that. And as Tassel and I did, we achieved things and bought things and whatever. It's really important to like be okay. Just as we said with radical self-acceptance, like accept that I want a house with the white picket fence and the family and the thing. If that's what you want, go get it. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's part of the path to realizing oneself and one's perfection and self-acceptance in full, to go through all of these, you could call it burning karma, all of these desires of the self, of attainment in the external. So I don't want people to feel weird by any of that.
Yes. And this is what we talk about all the time, is self-trust. That I can trust that whatever is arising in me is perfect. I don't have to feel ashamed about it. I don't have to feel I'm not evolved.
Right.
If I want a car, honor that I want a car that's perfect and beautiful. And I'll say for myself, there are still many material things that I would like. I have not transcended that at all. There's many material things I would like, but I do understand they're not going to bring me peace, but they will be fun.
Yeah, I should say that too. I there's a whole bunch of stuff that I like, tons of stuff that I think would be awesome to participate in, witness, whatever. Like, I want to go to Hawaii, right? If I had,
Me too.
these types of things. And it's funny, I say that, and I just realized that Joe, I'm not sure if Jamie's in Hawaii with Joe, but Joe's in Hawaii.
Louisiana. Yeah.
Louisiana, right. So I want to go to Hawaii and meet Joe. Maybe he can show me some ghosties or something. So, like, these experiences that sound amazing aren't, but I'm also like, okay, if I didn't get a chance to go, right? It's sort of like that.
That we can live in an inner peace no matter what is happening in the external, whether we're going to Hawaii, whether we have a partner, whatever.
Right.
But that it still would be fun.
Yeah. And it's okay to want to go have fun.
And it's okay to want that. And to me, again, this is the orientation of I'm living in my human and I'm also living in my soul. Mm-hmm. I can have both of those experiences simultaneously.
Totally.
Okay. So one other point I wanted to make is after I got in this practice, I also got in the phrases internal loneliness and internal abandonment. And I've talked to you a lot about this, but for most of my life, I've had this emptiness inside of me. And I think it was due to some things that happened in my childhood where I really just turned away from myself. I really abandoned myself in every way. And so for me, this very simple practice of just talking about, I think I want to write it down as well. What are my needs? This to me is such an antidote to that feeling inside of an internal loneliness or abandonment. Even when I just was talking about it, I felt really whole inside of myself. This like honoring of myself and paying attention, and it makes me feel all like whole and warm and fuzzy inside. So I love it. I hope other people.
And can I just share that internal loneliness thing? Can I just share some insight that I have about that? Mm-hmm. I think that internal loneliness feeling is two parts. So the first part is sort of our animalistic or societal nature, our communal nature as humans. So it's within our nature to want social interaction. And you can imagine, like, we need the mirrors for our evolution. That's one of the reasons it's built into us. So we need the mirrors for our evolution. So we have this feeling of wanting others to help us feel a part of, right? Yeah. What ends up happening, though, is the others tend to end up in us, causing us to reject aspects of ourself. So the aspects of ourself that we reject form a what I would call a spiritual gravity in the self that's drawing the awareness back within. And so what ends up happening is the loneliness feeling just grows, and whether it can come about any way, any way that you're forgetting yourself, casting aside aspects of yourself, forming the shadow. The more shadow is there, the more loneliness is going to be felt. The more other than or alienation or, I am weird, I am alone. The more shadow is there, the more of those feelings are going to be, the more powerful they can be. And it's all meant to turn the self back inward and find themselves again and accept themselves. We go back to the radical acceptance, accept themselves in love. Once that's done to a fairly high degree, that loneliness just goes away. Because you've accepted yourself enough that now you have to really try almost to get to the loneliness. And
I think I really like what you've said here. And I think the way we're often socialized in this aspect is to think, oh, I can get over my loneliness by being with other people.
Right.
And And what you just said is that often we end up abandoning aspects of ourselves in order to harmonize with other people.
Exactly.
Which leaves us feeling even more internally lonely.
Right. We want to be accepted. And most people they have a lot of trouble accepting people that are different from them.
Yes.
Like when people are different from you, the tendency for humans is to go, I don't really like how you're being. Can you adjust so that you're more like me, please? And they do that in different ways. They can do it more aggressively, less aggressively, passive aggressive, whatever. But they tend to do that often. So often that it's one of the only things they do. And so that puts the pressure on the other person to shift themselves and to let go of parts of themselves that are more natural to them. Yes. And that's where that loneliness starts to form because of that. So it's exactly the seeking for the
external acceptance
that causes the shadow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I almost view like this very simple practice and what we're talking about as basically soul retrieval. Basically calling back, bringing back, connecting with who we really are.
Yeah.
And then as we do that, as within, so without, we, as sort of icing on the cake, we are most likely going to feel more connection with others because we're more connected with ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. If we can notice that every single interaction with another human or even the society that's what's happening. It's soul retrieval. That's the reason you were pulled to it.
Yes.
Otherwise you wouldn't experience it. So any situation where somebody's doing something weird, making you feel bad, or it seems like they're making you feel bad, what's really happening is you're feeling bad because you're realizing that you've forgotten yourself in that moment. And so all of the people that are doing it can be thanked. And you can let go of all of that stuff. I mean, it's not simple. Some people can do it like that. Other people takes, years like it has for me. So, the pathway is perfect. And, so it's a awesome little weird thing that's going on. Mysterious kind of funhouse mirror thing happening on the earth. And we're all just trying to look at ourselves more closely, I think, is what's really going on.
Yeah. The Sufi poet Rumi.
I love Rumi.
Poem. Yeah. One of my dogs' name is Rumi because I love Rumi so much. But his poem, The Guest House, really expresses this beautiful idea. Like welcome in any visitor that comes into your life, whether it be a joy or a sorrow. It is all a message from the divine. It's all an interaction from the divine for your expansion.
Yeah. And can I just read a quote that came in? So this was God talking to me last night. I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, and all these questions were coming out about how is the best way for me to be, because I was having all these conflicting ideas. My mind was going bananas. And so I had all these conflicting ideas, and then I just sort of sat down and wrote, and I wrote, all paths end in me, for all who know me will abide in my house and be adorned with the eternal and everlasting peace I offer. And so whatever comes to you, whatever comes to your house, invite it in, know it is God, know it is you, and learn of it. Engage with it, see what's going on. That's how I read that, and that trusting that yourself, your path, and everything that you're doing is perfect and will lead to your unification with the divine.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, should we try the second practice?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the second practice. So the first practice is about this connection with yourself, which is most important, primary. Absolutely super important. The second practice is about your relationship with others in your life. And what came through for me was to share with your partner or with your kids or your coworker, whoever you're in relationship with, what is meaningful to me in our interactions, in our relationship? What are my preferences? And as we share this, it's not to say that this has to happen. It's again, honoring what maybe I enjoy in relationship. And that may possibly be different for two people in a relationship. So again, it gets into this orientation of curiosity about the other person in your life. Like, I don't know, maybe things are meaningful to you that I wouldn't even have thought of. Maybe things are meaningful to me that you wouldn't even have thought of. Mm-hmm. So it's really just, to me, a very beautiful practice of getting to know each other better. And I'm sure we've all heard of the love languages practice, which I think is really beautiful. But this is just very free form. This is just sharing, oh, these things are what I really enjoy in our relationship. These things are what really light me up. And not to say that someone has to do them, but just again, honoring that this is my truth. Yeah. This is my relational joy.
And I think you'll find if the other people are in harmony and in alignment with you, they'll want to bring those experiences to you, right? Like a part of them will know that, oh, she likes it when I do this, and then it'll feel aligned for me to go do that. But we can't do that. Like, the people don't know what you want unless you sort of tell them, right? Unless you're upfront and clear and honest, they're not going to be able to really meet those needs because they're not aware of them. And, you know, some people like myself have incarnations that are difficult to explain so for example, my set point is to not tell anyone what I want because I don't think this. I know that from where I came, there was no talking, and when you view another, you're aware of their everythingness. So there's no hiding their desires and there's no hiding of mine. We are in unity. So there's no need to tell anyone anything. So it's a whole different type of thing. It's also telepathic, so there's no verbal anything. And so my orientation is I sort of presume, because I forget that I'm a human, I presume they know. And it's fairly common for a lot of wanderers that are here to just presume everyone knows what you want and what you intend. And they don't. And it's hard to remember that, for me anyway. So that's an important part too. Like they just don't know, and then so because they don't know, they act astray from what you would truly want them to do by accident, and then that feels bad, and our rational mind will go, "Oh, they don't care about me. They don't care about what I want." But really, they just had no idea. They just were doing stuff, right? Yes. You know, they often have no clue.
And to me, this is very parallel to sex. And I'm not good at this at all, but I think.
Wait, you're not good at sex? Or you're not good at what?
Sorry, what I mean is like voicing what you enjoy sexually.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's the most vulnerable, I think, place for two humans to really be, generally.
I don't think you and I have ever really had that conversation, really. I mean, a little bit here and there, but we haven't really gone there either.
No,
I don't think.
Not really. Right? I don't think so.
I don't know what it is. I'm really curious. It's like there's some vulnerability or something about voicing our desire. Like, what is it? Why is it so hard?
For me, I don't know what sex is anymore. I lost all concept of. So I thought sex was like a thing that people did to like have fun with each other, basically.
Okay.
I just thought it was like a fun thing. Sometimes the fun was meant to make a baby, but sometimes it's just meant to be a fun thing. So that's really what I thought it was. Now I'm seeing, no, that's just like the lowest layer of it.
Right.
That there is so much more going on, and so much more opportunity for literally connecting with God during coitus.
Can we do a show on that? Because I'd really like to hear your thoughts more expansively on that topic.
Of course. So I think that's why I don't think I brought up anything, because I don't know what's happening. I don't get it. Basically, I had my awakening, wasn't really having sex, and then went however long without, like, with abstaining. Because for my spiritual growth, I was trying to obtain mastery of the body. So I did some abstainment from that, and from also masturbation. So I don't know what it is anymore, really. I've got some theories and stuff. So my human desires, oh, do this way, or let's do this, and that doesn't really tickle my fancy so much. It's more about the spiritual connections that are happening during that interest me more. So I think, I don't know. But yeah, we can totally talk about it. We should talk about it regardless of doing the show or not.
Yeah. I'd like to do the show, because I think a lot comes out.
It'll be fun sort of to do it live too.
Yeah. It'd be interesting.
Sure.
Maybe we could do it on Monday.
Perhaps. I think I have some fear about it because of the topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure.
But anyway, to me, whether we're seeking a spiritual connection during sex or a physical pleasure,
right?
Again, just talking about what our desires are, our preferences are, seems to be a little bit of an expansion for us to just go there.
Yeah, and I'd say too, like a lot of women sort of just let the man do whatever.
Yes.
And they don't really voice their own desires or what they like.
A play thing or something.
Right. Yeah. And so it can be very unhealthy, I think.
Yes.
So it's important to think about these things, I think, and find a partner that's like open and open to talk. The things aren't easy to talk about. You have to be very vulnerable and strong in yourself to really be able to
courageous. To me, what I most appreciate about our relationship is that we can talk, for the most part, about sort of vulnerable, tricky things. Like that's to me, that's the most important part of a relationship. Yeah.
If we couldn't do that, it wouldn't work.
Like what actually happens, the outcome of certain issues is somewhat less important to me. It's just to be able to be in our truth and share and accept and talk about it. That is so important.
Yep.
I want to make one other quick point before we do this practice. Part of the reason this practice came to me about sharing what is meaningful is I had a really uncomfortable interaction with my kids this week where I felt very angry at them for not helping me in the house, like doing chores and stuff like that. And what I wanted to say to them, my ego wanted to say, you never do this, you never do that, and just be all like in that energy. But what I realized would be much more constructive would be to tell them, hey, you guys, this is what would be meaningful to me if you did a chore without me asking. So I just think it's so great, rather than getting into the pain and the suffering and you never do this, you never do that. Okay, just let that go. Feel it on your own. Yeah. But then concentrate on expressing to whomever you're in relationship with, oh, this is what is meaningful to me. So it's a much more constructive way to
and also trying to recognize your own personal involvement in creating that scenario, right? Like the reason they're not doing chores is because they've never been told to, really, like in that way, that they don't have that habit built up. They don't have the, you've done everything for them. And I'm the same with my kids, right? My kids don't really do chores so much. so of course it would be kind of silly for me to expect them to just go do, like, I haven't just informed them that that's what I would prefer.
That any situation we're experiencing, we are co-creating. So I have co-created the situation with my kids of them not doing chores.
They're acting in response to the precedents that have been set, right?
Yes.
And so of course they're not doing chores. Right. Yeah.
It's like, again, how am I showing up with them? Okay, so would you like me to go first? What is meaningful?
Yeah, sure. I think I know your answers, but sure.
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question, what is meaningful to me in our relationship? And the theme here...
Oh, in our relationship.
In our relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. And the theme of all of the things that are meaningful to me is connection. Connection, intimacy, really emotional intimacy. So I wrote down, like, when you call me, that is very meaningful to me. When you write something down, like a little love note, something I can keep, that is very meaningful to me. When you are expressive towards me, like something you like about me or something you enjoy doing with me, that is very meaningful to me. When you come to me with like a problem or something you're working out, or you share your feelings with me, or anytime you might be like, oh, I'd really like to do this with you. That is what tends to be super, super meaningful to me. And it's just all about the connection, just feeling connected to you. And then, I don't know, I feel vulnerable saying this, but like just some more, I don't know, other things I really like when you put your arm around me, or if you like touch my face. These like kind of tender gestures, it almost makes you want to cry. That's very, I guess, because it just feels very loving. And we've talked about, like, in the Imago communication method that we did a video on, that often for many of us, what we seek in a partner is in some ways healing some wounds from our childhood. So in my childhood, I didn't experience a lot of tenderness or a lot of loving gestures or a lot of presence or a lot of connection. Like I just didn't. Not trying to criticize it, just that's obviously what I called in for that experience. So I think because I didn't experience a lot of like tenderness or connection or presence or all of that, that is why it's so meaningful to me in our relationship, like those things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd like to highlight here that what we're going to be, what I noticed while you were talking, what we're going to be talking about without us, I think, realizing it prior, was we're talking about, I think, divine masculine, divine feminine orientations to their desires, me embodying the divine masculine in this way and Tassel embodying the divine feminine. So basically my desire is very simply for to be accepted. And so in order for me to be accepted, I have to be vulnerable and express, be intimate, and do these things that you're wanting me to do, and feel accepted during that. So you can see, and we didn't talk about this beforehand. So you can see that there's an intermingling of needs here that's caused us to have a harmonious union, because we both are seeking different but the same path to ourselves through each other. So just as she is to trust that I love and I trust her and all of that without my expression, I'm to trust that my expression will be accepted. It's the sort of opposite but same activity that we're both working on with each other. And this is something that you'll see in any divine masculine, divine feminine, or spiritual union type of thing. It doesn't have to be man and woman. Gender is not relevant. You're going to see this dynamic at play. One person's going to be more expressive and call for more expression from you. The other person's going to be more reserved, generally, and have to trust that they can be expressive. That, like for me, I've always, or very often, spoken my truth, been very outspoken to the authorities, to the systems I've been forced into, being told basically to shut up and that I'm wrong and stuff constantly my whole life, more or less, whenever I breached the status quo in any way. And so I learned to just shut my mouth. And so I have to break down those barriers and learn to open my mouth and express, right? And then on the other side, the divine feminine embodies emotion and embodies intimacy. And the patriarchy informs a societal complex that pulls away from intimacy. So because now the patriarchy is starting to crumble away, and we're not going to have a matriarchy or a patriarchy, we're going to have a equality or equanimity. That's why we're balancing these things. And so, even the women in the patriarchy are pushing aside the emotional experiences in many ways, not offering their full emotion or their intimacy, because they feel that to be strong, they have to be more like the men. And so we have this I don't know what to call it, this paradigm that's formed. And I just really wanted to highlight that my needs, or my what's meaningful to me in the relationship, is exactly what like, in order, the more I embody and have my meaningful aspect, which is acceptance, the more I can express to her, which gives her what she wants, which is intimacy. And she gives me plenty of intimacy, so I don't need it. I don't call for it. I have an abundance of it. She expresses her feelings so often and perfectly, and with a peace and harmony with me generally, that there's no I don't have a need for that, right? So it goes both ways, and I just really wanted to highlight that both people create exactly the dynamic. And so your dynamic may be different, right? It may not be acceptance and intimacy, or however we frame it. It may be truth and lies and deception, or working through those types of things. It could be totally different. So it's really important to have this conversation, which I don't think we truly had to this degree until we did the stream. So,
and I just want to get it totally straight that your need, or sorry, what you find most meaningful in our relationship is being accepted.
Yeah, when I'm not accepted, so when I speak and then somebody goes, "Oh, I don't like it," it doesn't matter what I've said. I feel unaccepted. It hurts.
Yeah.
So whether I'm saying a joke, which I feel is funny, and to me, jokes are like the sense of humor of God is just amazing. And the people that tie morality to humor are confused. So I make jokes that are morally, or they're not of the morality that I embody generally, right? And so what happens is I make jokes, or I'll say something, I'll say a stance I have, a belief I have, and then people will say, "Ooh, I don't like that." And that's happened forever. So, and it's been part of my learning to be able to accept their unacceptance. And so now I'm at a place where whether I'm accepted or not, it's almost of no consequence to me. I'm more or less fairly balanced in that area. However, I still have times when I repress my urge to express in intimate or vulnerable moments, because I see no reason to engage in this acceptance, not acceptance battle that tends to happen. And so I have a limiting belief that when I'm vulnerable, I open myself up to being unaccepted, and then I'll feel hurt. And so I avoid the whole thing. And so I'm learning how to be more expressive, expecting acceptance instead of expecting rejection or unacceptance. So that's, I think, the best way to describe where I'm at with what's meaningful to me. I don't give a shit what anybody says at all, ever. To me, I've said this constantly, that words are wind. I don't, we're only ever saying two things. We're either saying I love myself or I don't love myself. And so whatever anybody says is irrelevant to me. But when it's framed in a way that makes me feel, or encourages in me to feel my own feelings around unacceptance, that's when I have trouble. So I guess what's meaningful to me is acceptance without me having to just like move past their unacceptance, which tends to be what I have to do. And it's my responsibility to do that. But if the person's able to accept, that would be meaningful to me, to just receive that in a very consistent way. And I tend to with you. So it's you being so accepting and loving that enables me to be intimate and vulnerable.
So interesting. I'm glad that we had this talk.
Me too.
We have talked a bit about how important acceptance is for you, but I think sometimes when we were in a little bit of a wobble, I didn't fully understand that. And I'm really grateful that you shared that. So I want to really remember that how meaningful it is to you. And I want to provide that to you.
I basically don't care about anything else. As far as interrelationship stuff, like,
yeah.
Or I mean, I don't see anything else as negative. Mm-hmm. The only thing I seem to still grapple with is unacceptance of me. Mm-hmm. But because I see myself as God, when I witness unacceptance of anything, I feel bad. So I have trouble with that, because if you're saying, like, if you're like, I bought this car and I just hate it, that feels bad to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, you're telling me that you hate me. That's what I hear. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing I hate myself. Mm-hmm. And so it's a weird, I know it's a weird state to be in. I'm not advocating people go to that place. It's a sensitive place to sit in because everything is personalized. And so then you have to sort of detach the personalization from it. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. But so yeah, I see almost all negative speak as negative speak against me. And so anything that's negative, I have trouble with. And I'm not saying that I don't do it. I do occasionally dip into it and wobble and stuff. So it's not meant to like judge anybody or say that it's wrong. It's just a difficult place to sit for me. Sometimes.
I want to also share that it felt really vulnerable for me to express what was meaningful to me about our relationship. That basically intimacy and connection is what I really value. Because as you said, in our patriarchal society, that's not really valued.
Right.
In fact, I think it's seen as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
But what I understand is that it's the opposite. It's a strength. Yeah. It's a strength to want to connect with other people. It's
weakness to avoid something difficult. That is more weak.
Yes.
Right? It is courageous and strong to approach something that is difficult, and your feelings can be difficult. So, I mean, no man should ever feel ashamed of his feelings. No woman should either.
Yes. And
it's insanity.
What I see is just like a sort of a human desire to connect with other people. Like that to me is very beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I think, as you said, this is part of the divine feminine energy that is arising more and more on the planet. But yeah, I felt a little like vulnerable saying all that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing it. It's I didn't feel so much vulnerable on my side. In that case, I'm not sure why. I think because you're so accepting of me that I don't worry too much about things I'm sharing. But I do I really appreciate it because it helps me to like remember that that's why sometimes you'll say things like basically you'll sort of ask me to express, and that'll be like bug me, right? Because I didn't express because I didn't feel comfortable, and I was avoiding it. Like I just said, I was being weak.
Okay.
And then you highlight my weakness by saying, "Can you express?" And then I'm like, "Oh, she's looking at it. She can see it. She can see my scared little boy. I thought I was hiding him, but she sees him." But it's important for me to then like find this strength. So it's we help each other in that way.
I really like that you just used that phrase, "your scared little boy." And I think that is such a beautiful practice as well with a significant other, is to be aware of and hold space for and honor and love that, you know, I have a scared little girl, you have a scared little boy. And sometimes if things get a little tricky, it's probably that scared little child inside that's just having a hard time.
Yeah.
So for each partner to just realize that exists within us and within our partner, and just to have compassion for our fears. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
So that's been about an hour and 6 minutes. So
Yeah,
I think
that
feels like we got through it. And, you know, I want to say that it went way better than I sort of thought it was. So I had some fear coming into this, thinking that we were at different wavelengths on this thing. And I was worried that we would sort of argue on the stream. And so right before this, we were like, I was like, I don't know how we can do this. Luckily for me, I was just confused. So it's perfect. I think it went really well. I hope everyone liked it. If you did, click the like button. And also thank you for watching live or in the future.
Yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
If you try out these two practices, so the first practice is, what are my own needs within my relationship with myself and how can I fulfill those? And the second practice is to share with your significant other or your kids or whomever you want to create more connection. These things are what are really meaningful in our relationship. If you try out any of these practices or you have other practices, please let us know. I like to think sort of all of this as like a living laboratory of life and how we foster greater connection with ourselves, with the divine, and with each other. Like, to me, that's what is meaningful to me.
Yes. And thank you everyone for watching. And we've read all the chat. I enjoyed watching Joe and Jamie banter with each other. But yeah, we'll talk to you soon. We'll be live on, it's Friday, right? So Monday at noon.
Maybe we'll talk about sex on Monday. Maybe.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Yeah, maybe. It's a topic that I've had some trouble wanting to talk about publicly. There's lots of programming around like what's okay to say and what's appropriate.
That's partly why I really want to talk about it, because I feel there's so many messages not to talk about it. So it makes me really want to talk about it. Yeah, we can. I think I just want to make sure I talk about it in the right way. So I think I'm exploring a bit of it. Like, I don't want to talk about it the way I've been talking about it. It was like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's happening. That doesn't seem very useful. So I think that's part of the reason, is I don't know what to say about it yet. So, but we can talk. I'm sure we can work it out and figure out where we rest with it and just say where we're at with it now, and that's good enough. Yeah, I don't think there's any wrong way.
Right.
I think even just expressing, I'm not really sure what.
I'm not really sure, but this is what I've found so far.
Because other people may be in the same boat, and just it kind of normalizes that.
Exactly. Thank you, everyone.